Imagine waking up one morning, looking out at the sea, and seeing the horizon completely disappear. Not because of fog or storm, but because nearly 200 warships have just blocked out the entire view. 40,000 elite soldiers have arrived on your doorstep, and you've got 500 trained fighters to stop them. Oh, and if you fail, the entire continent of Europe falls to invasion. No pressure, right? This actually happened in 1565 on the tiny Mediterranean island of Malta, and what unfolded over the next 4 months is one of the most insane, heroic, and utterly desperate battles in human history. Buckle up, because this story is absolutely mental. May 18th, 1565. Dawn is breaking over the Mediterranean, and the sight greeting Malta's defenders would make your blood run cold. The sea around the island has transformed into a forest of sails black canvas stretched so far across the horizon that it looks like a solid wall. 193 Ottoman warships carrying 40,000 of the most feared warriors on earth. Their crescent moon flags snap in the wind, and the silence is somehow worse than any war cry could be. Standing on the cliffs above the Grand Harbor is an old man, 70 years old. To be precise, his name is Jean Parisot de Valette, and he's the Grand Master of the Knights of St. John, essentially warrior monks who've sworn their entire lives to protecting Christianity. He's staring at this armada, and he knows exactly what it means. 7 decades of life behind him. Maybe only days ahead, and the fate of an entire continent resting on his shoulders. Behind him, 500 knights, and a few thousand peasants, sailors, and craftsmen. That's Italiano. Every single number, every tactical analysis, every military expert would tell you they're about to be completely annihilated. But here's the thing about Jean de Valetti's. Not the surrendering type. The man who sent this fleet is Suleiman the Magnificent, and that name is an exaggeration. He took Belgrade. He crushed Rhodes. He's arguably the most powerful ruler on earth in 1565, commanding an empire that stretches from Budapest to Baghdad. And now he wants Malta wiped off the map, this tiny rock in the middle of the Mediterranean that dares to block his path to Rome. You see, these Knights of St. John humiliated Suleiman decades earlier at Rhodes, then escaped by sea when that island finally fell. This time, Suleiman sent his commanders with one simple order. Finish them. Exterminate the last crusaders. Kick down the gates of Europe once and for all. On Malta, church bells ring out before dawn. Shadows move through the darkness, sharpening swords, hauling barrels of gunpowder, whispering desperate prayers. The air is thick with salt spray, sulfur smoke, and raw fear. A stonemason nails a wooden cross onto a wall, not for decoration, but to mark the exact spot where he expects to die. From the sea, Ottoman war drums begin their ominous rhythm. Deep, heavy, relentless. Then, at 8 in the morning, the first cannonball screams through the air and slams directly into Fort St. Elmo. The great siege of Malta has officially begun. 40,000 men have arrived to destroy 500. But every warrior standing on those crumbling walls knows the brutal truth. If they fail, if Malta falls, there's nothing left between the Ottoman Empire and the heart of Europe. No reinforcements are coming. No escape routes exist. They've got perhaps a week, maybe less. The echo of that first impact rolls across the island like thunder, and then silence. Even the seagulls stop crying. Let me tell you about these knights, because they're not your typical medieval soldiers. The Knights of St. John are warrior monksmen who've taken religious vows, but wear iron armor and carry swords. Each one has sworn a blood oath to protect the weak and die in God's service. To them, a fortress isn't just a military position, it's their monastery. Their sword is their prayer book. They watched Jerusalem fall to Saladin. They watched Rhodes burn despite their best efforts. And now, here on this barren rock in the middle of the Mediterranean, they're making their final stand. The numbers are absolutely savage. 500 knights from across Europe, France, Spain, Italy, England, all crammed onto this tiny island. Standing beside them are about 5,000 locals. Farmers, craftsmen, a handful of mercenaries. The rest are elderly people and children, folks too stubborn or too poor to flee. Their weapons, crumbling fortresses, scarce gunpowder, armor literally patched together with rope. But they possess one thing that 40,000 Ottomans do UNT. The absolute conviction that if Malta falls, the entire Christian world collapses with it. Across the water, the Ottoman fleet stretches, as far as anyone can see. Mustafa Pasha commands the Amir, veteran of 100 sieges, cold and methodical. Admiral Piali Pasha controls the navy, precise as a surgeon. And most terrifying of all, there's Turgot Race, the legendary corsair known as the Dragwood, the nightmare of every Mediterranean sailor. They've brought massive bronze cannons with names like the Basilisk, the Fire Drake, the Voice of Mecca. Their orders are crystal clear. Take Malta, kill the knights, open the road to Sicily and beyond. Inside Fort Sant'Angelo, by flickering candlelight, Jean de Valette stares at a map. His finger traces every cliff, every well, every defensive position. He knows they can't hold everything. He can only trade lives for time, buying hours and days with blood. His voice cuts through the silence like a blade. If they take the walls, we fight from the ruins. If they take the ruins, we fight from the graves beneath them. Nobody responds. They just bow their heads, because they all know he means every word. The entire island transforms into a war machine. Blacksmiths melt down plowshares to forge spearheads. Stonemasons frantically seal cracks in fortress walls with lime. Women and children haul buckets of sand and barrels of gunpowder. Even priests walk through artillery bombardments carrying crucifixes, giving final blessings to men who know they won't survive the day. Night falls, and the sea disappears beneath a forest of masts that block out the stars themselves. Enemy campfires glow like a second sky on the horizon. Laughter and the clang of weapons echo from the Ottoman lines. Every sound is a reminder that death is coming with the sunrise. Dawn breaks blood. Colorful Horstel standards. Ottoman symbols of rank and honor fly high over the fleet. War drums pound like the heartbeat of death itself. Thousands of elite janissaries, the Sultan's finest infantry, land at Marsamsid Bay. They drag 7-ton cannons through the mud. The ground literally shakes with every step. The massive basilisk cannon roars. The gates of Fort St. Elmo explode into splinters and stone dust. The real battle has begun. De Valette stands on the ramparts, completely motionless whilst debris and shrapnel rain down around him. He checks his pocket watch. 8 a.m. He turns to a clerk and says calmly, "Write this down. This is the hour this island begins to burn. All day long, the guns never stop." Walls crumble, roofs collapse into rubble. But nobody steps back. Nobody retreats. When they run out of ammunition, they melt down church bells to make more shot. When the cannons overheat from constant firing, they cool them with holy water, because it's all they've got left. That night, Malta glows like a torch in the middle of the ocean, visible 4 miles. De Valette receives the casualty lists and signs for every dead man personally. Then he writes a single line in the campaign log. The enemy has landed. The paper is sealed and sent to Sicily. Nobody really thinks there'll be time to write a second report. Day 3. The artillery fire has become the island's breathing rhythm. The ground never stops trembling. Men in the walls no longer flinch when stones fall. They simply clear the rubble and reload. Every eye, every gun barrel is fixed on Fort St. Elmo, the lonely fortress guarding the harbor mouth. It's the key to everything. If St. Elmo falls, Malta gets cut in half, and the Ottomans will flood through like a tsunami. For 7 days and nights, Mustafa Pasha turns this place into literal hell. Artillery pounds continuously, reducing watchtowers to dust. Walls breach. The defenders fill the gaps with timber, sandbags, and sometimes with the corpses of their fallen brothers because there's nothing else available. In the courtyard, a friar named Mashioa, former surgeon, walks. Among the wounded, there's no medicine left, only rags, salt water, and desperate prayers. He moves from man to man, whispering Latin into ears that can no longer hear. Every day, a messenger arrives from the Grand Master with the same question. Can you hold? And every single day, the answer sent back from that hell remains unchanged. We can. Day 10. St. Elmo is no longer a fortress. It's a ruin of blood and shattered stone. But every night, under torchlight, bleeding hands stack rocks back onto the walls. Captain Miranda is found sleeping while standing up, leaning against a cannon, his hands still gripping his sword. This impossible resilience enrages the enemy. Turgot Race, the legendary dragon of the Mediterranean, orders the massive basilisk dragged to within 200 yards point-blank range. Every shot now is an immediate death sentence. The powder magazine explodes, blowing bodies into the sea. The surviving officers beg de Valet to let them withdraw, but he coldly refuses. He knows the terrible arithmetic. Every hour St. Elmo holds is an hour the main fortifications survive. If St. Elmo falls quickly, Malta falls with it. June 22nd. The fort is just a hollow shell. Half the garrison is dead. The rest are blind, burned, or crippled. But that night, something extraordinary happens. In the roofless chapel, amidst the constant roar of cannons, the surviving soldiers kneel together. They celebrate their final mass. They chant the creed until sunrise dawn. The final assault begins. Janissaries swarm the ruins like locusts. The knights fight with broken swords, then with daggers, and when those shatter, they fight with rocks and bare hands. When the crescent flag is finally planted atop the Rubel, fewer than 60 men are left breathing. They kept their oath fight to the last man, but the price for the Ottomans is catastrophic. Turgot Race, the legendary commander, lies dead killed by shrapnel from his own artillery. Mustafa Pasha is absolutely mad with rage. He orders something barbaric, crucifying the bodies of the dead knights onto wooden planks and floating them across the harbor toward the main fortress at Burgu. It's a message written in blood. The war has only just begun. June 23rd. The sun sets on a sea of blood. For the first time in weeks, the cannons stop. But this silence brings no peace. It's heavier than the explosions. Grand Master de Valet stands on the wall, looking toward the ruins of St. Elmo. He makes the sign of the cross and speaks quietly. They showed us the way. Now we fight for their souls. The enemy thought the fall of St. Elmo would break Malta's spirit. They were catastrophically wrong. It transformed fear into vengeance. Fishermen drop their nets and pick up muskets. Monks drop their Bibles and pick up surgical knives. Children run through crossfire, carrying barrels of gunpowder heavier than their own bodies. Dawn rises, and hell returns with renewed fury. Mustafa Pasha turns every cannon toward Bugu and Singlia, the main defensive positions. Red dust blocks out the sun at noon. Church bells crack from the shockwaves alone. But inside the fortress, de Valet is a lighthouse. In a storm, he walks the ramparts wearing no armor, head held high whilst bullets whistle past. He wants everyone to see. He is not afraid. When gunpowder runs low, he rations it personally. When the wounded scream, he orders. Save the peasants first, the knights second. He understands instinctively that to hold this island, justice is as important as ammunition. July 15th, Mustafa Pasha delivers what he believes is the killing blow. 30,000 troops, 2 pontoon bridges across the harbor, 3 simultaneous attacks. The Ottoman war drums once made empires tremble, but today, the knights wait in dead silence. Their cannons are packed with nails, iron chains, and broken bricks, anything that can shred human flesh. When the enemy's shadows fill their vision, de Valet nods once. The cannons erupt. The harbor transforms into a sea of fire. Boats capsize. Bodies float like driftwood. The first wave breaks in less than an hour. Mustafa frantically orders another attack. Then another. 6 days and nights without rest. The streets choke with corpses. Blood dies. The mud red. When a wall near the bastion of St. Michael collapses, de Valet himself, 70 bloody years old, charges first into the breach. Sword in one hand, rosary beads in the other. A spear pierces his leg clean through. It reaps it out, blood gushing, but doesn't step back an inch. The axe spreads like wildfire. Exhausted soldiers who could barely stand suddenly rise. They throw themselves at the enemy like wounded beasts, fighting for survival. By nightfall, the Ottoman flags are pushed back into the sea. Burgu still stands. But new enemies appear now. Disease ravages the Ottoman camp. Scorching Mediterranean heat becomes unbearable. The stench of decay spreads through their trenches. Every night, Maltese guerrillas slip into enemy positions like ghosts. They steal gunpowder, food, then vanish into darkness. In the Ottoman tents, soldiers begin whispering a new fear, that this cursed island is defended by demons, not men. De Valette knows time has run out. No reinforcements have arrived. No relief fleet appears on the horizon. He has only faith that Spain won't abandon them. He writes in his diary, every word carved like stone. If God wills it, help will come. If not, we die in grace. Early September. A rumor electrifies both sides. Europe has finally woken up. 8,000 Spanish and Italian troops are reportedly coming. Mustafa Pasha understands he has one final chance. He throws everything remaining, every cannon, every soldier into one last desperate tsunami of violence. 12 straight hours of bombardment. The air itself seems to shatter. But when the smoke finally clears, the Ottoman flags haven't advanced a single inch. That night, fires flare up across the enemy camp. Not campfires. They're burning their tents, destroying their siege equipment. The invincible Ottoman Empire is retreating, turning around, admitting defeat. September 8th. The feast of the Nativity of the Virgin Mary. The cracked church bells ring out one final time. The siege is over. 40,000 men came to Malta. Less than half return home alive on the ramparts of Fort St. Angelo. De Valette kneels, not to celebrate, but to give thanks. He held the line for 4 months with nothing but blood, faith, and madness. Europe still stands. Around him, Malta is a giant graveyard. The sea is black with shipwrecks. Villages have vanished entirely. Every stone bears a scar. Every wall carries a name. Fewer than 200 knights survivably. Missing limbs, horribly burned. But they don't weep. They stand there having earned a new title. The gatekeepers of Europe. The news travels faster than any ship. From Rome to Madrid, church bells ring in unison. A lone island has stopped an empire. Suleiman the Magnificent dies a year later, carrying a shame he never swallowed. But De Valette doesn't stop working. He walks through the rubble of Burgu, points to the ashes, and declares, "From here we will build a city that will never fall." Stonemasons replace soldiers. Chisels replace swords. A new capital rises, carved from the same limestone that survived the bombardment. They name it Valletta, after the man who refused to kneel. In 1568, Jean-Parisot de Valette is laid to rest forever beneath the city that bears his name. He never left Malta again. Centuries later, Valletta still stands. Those pale stones glow under the Mediterranean sun. Tourists walk streets that once ran with blood. Ships glide past the harbor where the Ottoman fleet burned. The Great Siege of Malta wasn't just a battle. It's eternal proof that conviction can be stronger than numbers. That a few hundred determined souls on a lonely island can genuinely alter the course of human civilization. Thank you for standing with the men who once held the gates of Europe. If this story made you pause and genuinely think about what people are capable of when everything is on the line, smash that like button and subscribe. And I genuinely want to know, if you were De Valette, what would you defend with your last breath? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't miss the next video, where history isn't just remembered, it's felt in your bones.